Chapter 26. Bovine House, London, England, June 12th, 1889. "Do you think there's anything more you could tell me, Ghost?" Ray asked. His pen hovered above the page of his notebook, and a droplet of ink threatened to fall from its nib. Ghost was looking out the window at the garden below, where Jamie was half-heartedly tending to the small garden. The youth moved as if in some kind of trance, the motions automatic and unconscious. Gardening to them right now was simply a small, tedious ritual to stop them thinking too hard about everything going on, even for just a little while. Ghost was unsure of at what point he stopped looking at Jamie through the glass, and instead began staring into the reflection of Ray in the window. The overlapping images pulled his mind back to the conversation, and he looked into Ray's one blue eye. It was a beautiful, pale blue, a color that reminded Ghost of the sky he had so long missed. He brushed the thought aside, noticing that he had been staring into Ray's eye for far too long. I don't know," Ghost admitted. He fidgeted with the cuffs of his shirt. "At least, I don't think more than I've already told you." "I suppose you wouldn't have seen much if it was only darkness." Ghost nodded, and then shook his head quickly. "Well, no. It wasn't that it was darkness. Or it was, but not in the way you would think of it. The end, as you called it, is a realm with an absence of light. That doesn't mean it was dark, per se. There was no source of light, no sun or moon, no stars or even flames. But still you could see things. You could see the endlessness of the darkness, I suppose, stretched out upon an endless horizon of white stone. It was like... It's like how space isn't really dark. Not in itself. Space is just an emptiness. The end wasn't dark, it was just empty of light." Ray scribbled the words in his journal, trying to envision the concept in his mind. It sent shivers down his spine. Most things Ghost told him about the end had done so. It felt as if every conversation with the man slotted pieces into the holes in his mind, replacing knowledge that was there once and had been ripped away along with his eye. "I see. And Endirian. Are you comfortable talking about her? Did you see her?" Ghost paled noticeably, which was an achievement considering his already fair complexion. "No, not really. I saw something like her, but it wasn't her. I don't think so, at least. Not entirely her." "What do you mean by that?" Ray asked softly. Ghost once again adjusted how he was sitting, pulling his legs up onto the chair and crossing them beneath him. "I suppose in the same way that the end was not dark, but empty. What I saw was not Endirian, but it was part of Endirian. Endirian is not a person, Ray. She's nothing and everything. Something so much more than I think I even understand, than anyone could understand. Thinking about it, thinking about the mass of writhing flesh and horns, the thing that watched over me in my cell, it hurts to think about. Right here." Ghost lifted a trembling hand and tapped a finger to his temple, right behind his eyes. "It feels like my mind is going to break under the pressure of thinking about it. Like even the mental image of it carries so much weight I would buckle beneath it. And that thing, the warden of my cell, it wasn't even her. Not really. The thing that came to me was Endirian, but only in the way that your finger is you." "A piece of her, you mean?" Ray's pen hovered over the page. Ghost nodded. "Yes, I think, yes. A piece of her. A limb. A branch on a tree, or a single tendril. It had a name. Its own name. An old name. Before Endirian changed it. The mold. That's what it does, I think. It changes you. Lets her make you a piece of herself. It lets Endirian inside your mind and allows her to bend it. Bend you. Your friends are like branches of her now, too. You were, for a while, from what I've been told. Ray swallowed, shuffling uncomfortably himself at the mention of that. Even the feeling the ghost had described, the pain behind the eyes, Ray could feel it now. Not as intense as it had been before when he still had his infected end eye, but the dull throb remained nonetheless. I see. Ray cleared his throat. Ghost, were you ever infected by the mold? Ray looked the strange man up and down. He took in his frame, built like a scarecrow beneath his tattered blue coat, with limbs poking out at odd angles from the military attire. There was something unsettling about him, but Ray was unable to narrow down exactly what it was. He wondered if it was simply that there was something wrong about Ghost. Something imperceivable that presented the fact he shouldn't exist. Or perhaps it was the Ghost had been touched, in a way, by the end. Some mark of that other realm which clung to him. Ray couldn't help but wonder if that was a mark he himself carried. Was that why Jamie had been so distant these last few days? Could his assistant sense the stain of that other world on his soul? Ray felt a lump rise in his throat, and he coughed as Ghost finally answered his question. Ghost had been cradling his head in his hands for a few moments as he thought, trying to ease the pressure building in his skull. I think I was, maybe, for a while, he said finally. I think Endirian, or the Warden, tried to infect me with it. Ghost twitched a little and shook his head, trying to dislodge the image in his mind. I don't remember. His voice cracked under the weight of whatever he was trying to hold back. I'm sorry, Ray, I don't remember. I just remember... Ray watched as Ghost leant forwards, burying his face in his hands and breathing raggedly. You remember what, Ghost? Ray's voice was soft. Any pretense of professionalism he had tried to force at the beginning of this conversation had disappeared, replaced with genuine empathy and compassion. Ghost managed to control his breathing. I remember that it hurt, he whispered. I remember all that pain, feeling it burrow into you, digging into your skin and your nerves, every tendril of the mold like a million worms, eating away at flesh, filling your skin with holes, burning away at everything that makes you, you. Gods, Ray, it hurt. It hurt for so long. Ray closed his notebook, flinching at the thought of the pain he knew so well. The pain that had incapacitated him in Athens. The burning, twisting, creeping sensation underneath his skin. His hand drifted to brush his cheek, where the skin was still purple and sickly, scarred in violet hues. He could feel it now, ever so faintly, bubbling against his bones. I'm so sorry, Ghost, Ray said quietly. Ray extended a hand to rest on Ghost's shoulder, but the moment he made contact, Ghost reeled back, almost toppling out of his chair. His eyes were once again wide, streaked with red veins of sleeplessness. I'm sorry, Ghost said quickly. Sorry, that wasn't you. I'm not used to contact, I suppose. He was still breathing heavily, and his entire body trembled. It's been a long time since someone... since anything actually touched me that didn't hurt, and I'm just not used to it. He looked at the ground, as if ashamed of himself for the outburst. I think I'm done for today, if that's all right. Ray nodded, looking away. Yes, of course. Of course. But, please, let me know if you remember anything else. Ghost nodded, standing. I will. You'll be the first person I come to. There was a moment of awkward silence as the two men stayed still, Ghost standing and Ray sitting in his chair, his arms over the closed book on his lap. Neither could bring themselves to say anything more, though it was clear something was weighing on both of them. Something neither fully understood, let alone knew how to convey. Some connection they couldn't quite place. Finally, Ghost pulled himself away from the silence and made his way outside where Jamie was gardening. Ray watched them for a while through the window. He noted how the two visibly relaxed in each other's presence. He had tried not to pry, watching them bond over the days since the incident. Watching them speak together so freely and work so easily together in the garden. As much as Ray's mind was preoccupied, crammed to the breaking point with all the information now laid at his feet, he couldn't help but find his attention drawn to the two. He felt an underlying twinge of jealousy watching them, and he felt guilty for feeling that way. It was not long ago that Jamie had let down their barriers around him in such a manner. Ray had been the person to bring them comfort for so many years, and now it seemed his presence only put Jamie more on edge. He had spent so long as a guardian for Jamie and Athena, tried so hard to be the best uncle he could for them. It hurt him now that Jamie was so uncomfortable around him, even if he understood the reasons why. He was glad that Jamie had someone else to be comfortable around, even if it wasn't him. He forced himself to be. To put Jamie before himself, even if it pained him. Jamie needed the comfort, especially while Athena was gone. Ray had watched his family, if it could be called that, cobbled together and fragile as it was, the thing he had longed for all his life since the death of his mother, finally crumble around him. He had lost Sherbet, his oldest friend, who he had met when he was just a child. He had lost Athena, the child he had sworn to care for and protect for so many years. And now it seemed he was watching Jamie slip away too. There was a split second, a very brief moment, where Ray considered that perhaps he was not jealous of Ghost, but of Jamie. That he was jealous of how easily Ghost opened up around the young person, how comfortable he seemed, the way his wide brown eyes relaxed and his mouth settled into a soft, barely noticeable smile. Ray did not want to elaborate on the thought. Even if he wanted to, he wasn't sure he could. It wasn't the simple, rational thoughts he was used to. It was not laid out in words across his mind for him to understand. It was merely a feeling, an ache that pulled his mind in that direction. Before it could be pulled too far, however, he was pulled back into the present as Martin entered the room. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything." Martin nodded at the notebook in Ray's hand. Ray shook his head. No, not at all, Martin. I was just thinking." Martin nodded, sitting in the chair where Ghost had been only a few minutes before. "A good thing to do, thinking," the large man smirked. "You know, I've often been told that what can help, especially in such difficult times, is talking about those thoughts." Ray sighed, smiling slightly. "Thank you for the suggestion. But I'm not one of your patients, Professor Doris." Martin shrugged, leaning over to rest his elbows on his knees and peering at Ray over steepled fingers. Ray noticed patches of white in the professor's dark beard he had never seen before, and he wondered briefly how long it had really been since the two had simply sat down to talk. "I know. I simply want to keep the option open for you, I suppose," Martin said gently. You're a friend in this household, Ray. A friend to me and Emmanuel. To Jamie and Athena, especially. As he spoke, Martin nodded his head out the window, where Jamie was pointing out different flowers to Ghost. We needn't talk as therapist and patient. You've been through so much, Ray. All of you have. The least I can offer you is the chance to talk with a friend. Ray nodded. Maybe someday, when this is all done. He took a deep breath. Have you heard anything? Martin shook his head sullenly. I am afraid not. Emmanuel has checked with some contacts at several ports around the country. There's no sign or record of them leaving England, so that's a start. Assuming Athena is with them unwillingly, as we suspect, they wouldn't risk trying to force them to leave, and they likely would have been pulled up for papers if travelling willingly. Ray wrung his hands. So they're in the country, at least. I doubt they're still in London, however. I doubt it too, Martin agreed. I've checked both Charleston House and the home of Mr. Mistvale. There's no signs of life. Is there anything else you think they might be? Ray shook his head. I don't know. I know Easton owns several properties scattered across the countryside. It's possible they're hiding in one of them, only, well, I don't know where any of them are. Is it possible Jamie might know? Ray shrugged. Perhaps. Is it wise to put that pressure on them right now, however? Martin leant back in his chair, nestling his large frame into the cushioning. He took a pipe from out of his waistcoat and began rummaging around in another pocket for some tobacco. I see what you mean. But they want to help, Ray. He's desperate to, in fact. It's hurting him inside to stay here doing nothing. In my own opinion, it would do them good, Ray, to be involved. They have a right to be. And it would give them a goal to work towards. I suppose you're right, Ray nodded, looking back out the window. I'm worried about them. I hear them at night, waking up from their nightmares, crying about the walls and the darkness. Jamie feels trapped, I can sense that much, but I can't help them. Martin struck a match and lit his pipe, taking a moment to suck on it and get it properly smoking. And why can't you? He raised an eyebrow. Ray scoffed. Look at me, Martin. I'm not who I was. I don't even know who I am anymore, and Jamie, they can see that. The way they look at me with fear and disgust, I can't be the person they once needed. Martin shook his head, sitting up in his chair. Interesting. That's not how I see it at all, Ray. Let me tell you what I see. I see a young person who cares so much about their mentor, their uncle, that they're afraid to layer their own problems onto his. I see a person who fears they have done so much wrong, who could not bear the hurt of their guardian seeing all of that. And I see a man who has been through more than I could ever fully understand, projecting his own doubts and his own self-loathing onto the thoughts of those around him, all to justify his own self-inflicted pain. Ray swallowed. He wasn't sure what to say. He wasn't sure what he could say. Martin's words dug into his chest, aching in their accuracy. I just don't want them to go through this alone, he mumbled, looking at the floor. Then maybe you should tell Jamie that, Martin prompted. Regardless, you're right to an extent about their nightmares. Bovine House is a fine home. It works well as an office for myself, and it's close to Emmanuel's law firm. but I am afraid it isn't exactly built to house 3 extra guests, especially not ones who react so negatively to small spaces. The historian swallowed. Of course. Yes, you're right. I don't wish to overstay our welcome, I assure you. We can find somewhere else to move and get out of your hair as soon as... Hold on a moment, Raymond. Martin chuckled, leaning forwards again with his pipe between his teeth. I'm not throwing you out. Jamie and Athena are both very dear to Emmanuel and I. You know this. As are you. Emmanuel practically grew up with Strawberry. He'd feel terribly guilty about throwing you all out onto the streets. I'm simply saying that this residence may not be the best place for all of us right now. Martin took the pipe out of his mouth. Emmanuel and I have been packing. I have my own family home in Dorset. Plenty of room for Jamie, equipment to help you with your research into those strange vials Athena provided. We can still look for Athena from there. It would simply be more spacious, if that's agreeable to you. We can leave as soon as you're ready. Ray was stunned, mulling the offer over in his mind. Martin, we couldn't possibly accept... Nonsense, Martin cut him off. This is about Athena's safety. About Jamie's safety. Besides, the old place needs work done anyway. It would be a good excuse for us to visit for a while. Emmanuel has already arranged a commute back to his law firm when necessary. As I said before, we're here for you, Ray, as your friends. Martin, I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything. Martin raised his hands. Not to me, at least. You might, however, want to tell Jamie and Ghost out there that they should prepare to leave soon. He offered another one of his wide, charming smiles and stood up, patting Ray on the shoulder with a large, meaty hand as he went. I have some errands to run, but I'll be back shortly. Take care, Ray. Yes, of course, thank you, and you as well, Martin. Ray nodded. He was no longer paying attention to Martin, however. Instead, he was smiling down at Jamie and Ghost. Perhaps, if Martin was correct, he was not being pushed away after all. David clung to the wall of an alleyway as he watched the large, bearded man leave the building. He had been doing a final sweep of his home the day before, searching for anything he might require at Bancroft House, when the man first arrived, knocking on the door of Villa Centros, asking for David by name. Perhaps it had been overkill to follow him, to watch each of his movements with such dedication. He could have simply been a man looking for charity or some other coincidence. But no, not this time. The curtains to the windows on the upper floor were drawn, but David had seen the familiar silhouettes at night, moving in the candlelight. He knew Ray was in there. David could feel him there, the last remnants of Enderian still clinging to the man in the vastness of her absence. Ray had been a close friend once. There had been something about him that had been so comforting and set him at ease after so many years of being on edge. So many years of running. Now, however, Raymond Morningstar was just another obstacle in the way of a larger goal. Perhaps what David had in mind was extreme, but he was sure that Sherbet would be willing to take part in any way. Sherbet would do anything to get back in Enderian's good graces, as foolish as the desire was for such a failure. And after all, it was better to be safe than sorry.